Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति शिवपदान्तिकम् नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामीनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 29, Explanation of Devotional Service. So currently we are in the second section of this chapter where Lord Kapila is describing devotional service conducted in different modes of material nature based on the condition of executor of the devotional service. Again, needless to say, devotional service is pure in itself, but just like the sunlight is seen through different colored glasses will appear of different color. Similarly, devotional service, although pure, when performed by a sadhaka who himself is in modes of material nature, then that appears to be in the modes of material nature. So we are at text 15. निषेवेता निमित्तेन स्वधर्मेण महीयसा क्रियायोगेन शस्तेन नातिहिंस्त्रेण नित्यशः. Translation.
A devotee must execute his prescribed duties, which are glorious, without material profit. Without excessive violence, one should regularly purport. One has to execute his prescribed duties according to his social position as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. The prescribed duties of the four classes of men in human society are also described in Bhagavad Gita. The activities of Brahmanas are to control the senses and to become simple, clean, learned devotees. The Kshatriyas have the spirit for ruling. They are not afraid on the battlefield, and they are charitable. The Vaishyas, or the mercantile class of men, trade in commodities, protect cows, and develop agricultural produce. The Shudras, or the laborer class, serve the higher classes because they themselves are not very intelligent. From every position, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Swakarmana tam abhyaracha, one can serve the Supreme Lord by performing one's prescribed duty. It is not that only the Brahmanas can serve the Supreme Lord and not the Shudras. Anyone can serve the Supreme Lord by performing his prescribed duties under the direction of a spiritual master or representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No one should think that his prescribed duties are inferior. A Brahmana can serve the Lord by using his intelligence, and the Kshatriya can serve the Supreme Lord by using his military arts. Just as Arjuna served Krishna. Arjuna was a warrior. He had no time to study Vedanta or other highly intellectual books. The damsels of Brajadham were girls born of the Vaishya class, and they engaged in protecting cows and producing agriculture. Krishna's foster father Nanda Maharaj and his associates were all Vaishyas. They were not at all educated, but they could serve the Lord by loving Him and by offering everything to Him. Similarly, there are many instances in which Chandalas or those lower than the Kshudras have served Krishna. Also, the sage Vidura was considered a Shudra because his mother happened to be a Shudra. There are no distinctions, for it is declared by the Lord in Bhagavad Gita that anyone engaged specifically in devotional service is elevated to the transcendental position without a doubt. Everyone's prescribed duty is glorious if it is performed in devotional service of the Lord, without desire for profit. Such loving service must be performed without reason, without impediment, and spontaneously. Kṛṣṇa is lovable, and one has to serve him in whatever capacity one can. That is pure devotional service. Another significant phrase in this verse is Naiti, Nathi,
It's a
Nathin
big
Vriche.
purport. I think we will
Sure.
connect it with two
Hare
parts.
Krishna.
Now, how to perform such devotional service? It is being mentioned. A devotee must execute. Now, here we are going to see basically what is happening is we are going to see the 18 qualifications of devotional service. One after another, they are going to be narrated by the Supreme Lord. It has started with the previous verse, Mad Guna Shruti Matrena. So, the hearing, the activities of the Supreme Lord, qualities of the Supreme Lord. And now the second is, one must execute his prescribed duties. Right? This is very important. These prescribed duties means according to Varnashrama duties, which are glorious. So what is the meaning of which are glorious means they should not at least be contrary to the regulative principles. So this is very important. Without material profit. Without material profit means without the proprietorship that I want to enjoy. One should perform it very well, and whatever the fruit of that duty is, one should utilize it in this, offering a part of it to the Supreme Lord, then engaging, it in the one's family and other thing, which is also not different than the family of the Supreme Lord, and then saving for the future. So, but the mood has to be very clear. Without excessive violence, one should regularly perform one's devotional activities. So here, excessive violence, Srila Prabhupada will be explaining this phrase later. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that based on one's psychophysical nature, one is characterized as one of the Varna and one of the Ashrama. Ashrama is very clear, Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, Sannyas. Varna is based on one's psychophysical nature, Guna Karma Vibhagashah. So Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita 18.42, 43, 44. What are the qualifications of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya and Shudra? Shamo, Damo, Tapashaucham, Kshantirarjamameva cha, Jnana Vijnanam Astikyam, Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. So peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness, Astikyam. These are the natural qualities by which Brahmanas work. So these are the qualities and activities of the Brahmana. Then Shauryam Tejo Dhrutik Draksham Yudhya Chapi Apalayanam Danam Ishwar Bhavascha Kshatram Karma Swabhavajam. So these are the Kshatra activities: heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in the battle, generosity, and leadership. These are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. So these are the Kshatra Karma Swabhavajam. And then there is a Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam, which are these Krushi Gorakshavanijya, Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam, Paricharyatmakam Karma, Shrudrasyapi Swabhavajam. So this is 18.42 to 44 Bhagavad Gita. Farming, cow protection, and business are the natural work for the Vaishyas, and the Shudras are the labor and the service to others. Paricharyatmakam Karyam. And again, needless to say, all this is based on Guna Karma Vibhagashaha, and these are not the by birth or jati considerations. Bhagavad Gita is very clear, right? Chaturvaranyam maya srishtam Guna Karma Vibhagashaha. So further, Srila Prabhupada writes that at every position in Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed that Swakarmana tamacharabhyam siddhim vindanti manavah. That one has to engage one's activities in the service of the Supreme Lord. Now, somebody will say, which activities? So Bhagavad Gita will ask is, what is your psychophysical nature? It is not that only the one particular Brahminical activities can be engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord, and some other Kshatriya activities may not be engaged. No. Lord Kṛṣṇa is engaging Arjuna's horrendous, horrific activities of killing in the battlefield in the service of the Supreme Lord. So every activity can be engaged in the service of the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada says, it is not that only Brahmanas can serve the Supreme and not the Shudras. No. No one should think that his prescribed duties are inferior. This is a very important statement. No one should think that, my duties are inferior. No. According to my psychophysical nature, this is how I am engaged. Brahmanas can serve, Kshatriyas can serve. Prabhupada said Arjuna was a Kshatriya. And the best of the devotees of the Supreme Lord, who are the gopis and Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda Mai, Prabhupada says, all of them came from the Vaishya community. Of course, they are the pure devotees. But when they are exhibiting their pastimes, they are Vaishyas. Prabhupada says they were not very highly educated, but they could serve Kṛṣṇa with great love and affection, that they are established as the highest devotees. Right? Some of the Mahajans, they are coming from the Danava family. Swayambhu, Narada, Shambhu, Prahlad, right? And Bali Maharaj. Prabhupada quotes Vidura here and Shabari. They all came from the families which are even lower than Shudras or lower than the Shudras. So there is no distinction, as it is declared by the Supreme Lord, that anyone can be engaged in devotional service and one can benefit from the devotional service. Prabhupada says, everyone's prescribed duty is glorious if it is performed in devotional service of the Supreme Lord, without desire for profit. And three things are there: without reason, without impediment, and they should be performed spontaneously. Ahituki apratihata, and it should be, that is how should be the devotional service should be, spontaneous devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Just like there is a beautiful story of gopis. This young gopi, she always absorbed in thought of Kṛṣṇa. And one day she went to the market of Braj and she was having butter, dahi, and she was having milk. And she kept it all for sale. They are from Vaishya community, Prabhupada writes here. And generally in the market, you will be shouting out, you will be making the advertisement, take my butter, dahi, butter, dahi lo, dahi lo. And she was so deeply absorbed in Kṛṣṇa that instead of chanting butter, dahi, milk and everything, she just began to chant Govinda Damodara Madhaveti. Right? And there's a beautiful verse by Bilvamangal Thakur. So it is not that the material duty or material activity, any activity is inferior. Prabhupada says the greatest of the devotees are coming from the Vaishya community. Yeah, please continue.
Another significant phrase in this verse is Nati Himasrena, with minimum violence or sacrifice of life. Even if a devotee has to commit violence, it should not be done beyond what is necessary. Sometimes the question is put before us. You ask us not to eat meat, but you are eating vegetables. Do you think that is not violence? The answer is that eating vegetables is violence, and vegetarians are also committing violence against other living entities because vegetables also have life. Non-devotees are killing cows, goats, and so many other animals for eating purposes. And a devotee who's vegetarian is also killing. But here, significantly, it is stated that every living entity has to live by killing another entity. That is the law of nature. Jivo jivasya jivanam. One living entity is the life for another living entity. But for a human being, that violence should be committed only as much as necessary. A human being is not to eat anything which is not offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yajna sistasniha sanataha. One becomes freed from all sinful reactions by eating foodstuffs which are offered to Yajna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee therefore eats only prasada or foodstuffs offered to the Supreme Lord. And Kṛṣṇa says that when a devotee offers him foodstuffs from the vegetable kingdom with devotion, he eats that. A devotee is to offer to Kṛṣṇa foodstuffs prepared from vegetables. If the Supreme Lord wanted foodstuffs prepared from animal food, the devotee could offer this, but he does not order to do that. We have to commit violence. That is a natural law. We should not, however, commit violence extravagantly, but only as much as ordered by the Lord. Arjuna engaged in the art of killing, and although killing is, of course, violence, he killed the enemy simply on Kṛṣṇa's order. In the same way, if we commit violence as it is necessary by the order of the Lord, that is called natihimsa. We cannot avoid violence, for we are put into a conditional life in which we have to commit violence. But we should not commit more violence than necessary or than ordered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna.
The next important point is Nati Himsena, without excessive violence or with minimum violence. So, what is the meaning of this? So, Prabhupada says here, even if a devotee has to commit violence, it should be done beyond, it should not be done beyond what is minimal required necessary. And Srila Prabhupada gives example of eating, because one has to eat. The law of the nature is that jivo jivasya jivanam. So sometimes people say, no, there is not much difference. You are vegetarian, we are non-vegetarian. You are also killing plants, and you are also killing the life, and we are also killing life. What is the difference? So Prabhupada says, no. The principle here is nati himsena. Because the living entity is in the material world, which is Visama Sthiti, therefore he has to survive on another living entity, which are the plants. But even when devotee eats this, he is also not going to, he is not going to simply eat it without offering it to Kṛṣṇa. Now, somebody will say, okay, you are offering this to Kṛṣṇa. We will offer, non-vegetarian to Kṛṣṇa, but Kṛṣṇa doesn't accept. Lord Kṛṣṇa very clearly said, what he accepts in Bhagavad Gita. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti uparitaham ashnami prayatatmanah. 9.28. So, the Lord has very clearly said what he accepts and what he doesn't accept. And accordingly, a devotee will commit very minimal violence in his regular activities. Even the activity, one can see the glorious example of Arjuna. Arjuna was very famous for committing minimal violence and maximum results. Like there is a story of, when Dronacharya asked for the Dakshina, and first Kaurava said that, and actually in the modern Mahabharata it is not shown. Karna was refrained from that war. That is being shown. But original Mahabharata says Karna also went there. Karna was also fighting, and all these Duryodhan, Dushasan, they were fighting, and they were just ruthlessly killing the soldiers of Virat. Drupad. And Drupad himself was such a powerful warrior. And then there is a dialogue comes, Dushasan is asking Duryodhan, when Drupad just, they destroyed the Kaurava Sena, destroyed the pride of all the Kauravas, and they started running back. They started running. And they came to Dronacharya gasping for their life, and they said, Dushasan was saying, Gurudev, you said only one Drupad was there. There were 10 Drupads fighting with us. And Dronacharya smiled and he said, Drupada is such a swift warrior that his chariot was moving in such a way that you thought that there are 10 Drupads. There is only one Drupad. And Duryodhan, Karna was putting his head in shame. And by the time what happened, that entire army of Drupad also came chasing all this Kaurav Sena. And now Yudhishthir Maharaj, he simply looked at Dronacharya to take a permission to go and fight. And Dronacharya, with his eyes only, he gave him permission, eye gesture. And then Yudhishthir Maharaj looked at Bhima, because Bhima is always voracious in fighting. Bhima karma vrukodara. So he said, my dear Bhima, we have to just capture Drupad. Leave aside all these poor people who are going to fight with you. And then Arjuna smiled. With minimal violence, and this was the point why Drupad decided to give Draupadi later, to Arjuna. He said that I want that warrior who captured me with minimal violence. Okay, so this is the Nati Himsena. Later we'll come across a beautiful pastime where Dhruva Maharaj's brother Uttama is attacked by the Yakshas. And he is killed by Yakshas. And Dhruva becomes so angry with the Yaksha community that he launches attack on the Alankapuri, the capital of Yaksha. And there is such a severe fight it takes place. It is amazing fight. When you read that fight, you will forget all the fight which is happening across. Okay. Personally, I like war very much, war descriptions. But we should derive happiness hearing from Bhagavatam fights, Mahabharata fights, because they are purifying as well. The best of the espionage stories you will find in Mahabharata, in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And then finally, Kubera, who is the god of the, no, then finally Manu, he approached Dhruva. Manu is the great grandfather in the dynasty, and he said, my dear Dhruva, the Yakshas killed your one brother, but look at this, how many Yakshas you have killed. My dear child, our anger has to be in the proportionate. Maybe you are just doing too much of anger. And then, Dhruva, he accepts his mistake of being excessively angry. And Bhagavatam says this was also a plan of the Supreme Lord. By the anger of Dhruva, all these yakshas were transferred, who were killed by Dhruva, they were transferred to the sun globe for a much elevated life, right? So this is Nati Himsena. Very beautiful pastimes are going to come later. Srila Prabhupada's father was very famous for this. Prabhupada's father had Gaur Mohan Dey. He had a cloth shop. And he was such a personality. Of course, now we have to apply it based on our own time, place, circumstances. We cannot just outrightly apply it. But generally, the biggest problem with the cloth shop is the chuhas, the rats coming in and scratching and destroying the cloth. So he used to keep some nice food for the rats also, and used to pray to the Lord that, my dear Lord, when the rats come, please guide them to the food, because they are hungry for the food. Let them eat the food, and the cloths also will be saved, and rats also will live their life. such an amazing personality he was, Gaur Mohan Dey, Prabhupada's father. So this is how a devotee practices this Nati Himsena. So Himsa, Prabhupada says, when it is required, it has to be done. When we have to commit violence, we have to commit. And especially for those who are Kshatriyas, who are standing on the on the front line, those who are in the police department, sometimes we have to shout at children, and that is also a kind of violence, Shabdik violence. But it has to be in a controlled way, right? Nowadays, recently there was a very, very bad news. Such a bad news it was, that the father was beating the child in the 12th standard. The girl, it has happened in Maharashtra, a place called as Atpadi. And the girl was also 10th standard topper, she was. And they have family also coming from a very poor family. And then this father, and they also must have, taken loan and done a lot of sacrifice for her to get into a good class. This 10th and 12th classes is another Mayajal and Chakravyuha. And then there in couple of exams she could not do well. So father became very angry and he spoke something to the child. And nowadays children also, they also speak back, because everybody is trained in watching all these the serials every day. All that Saas Bahu serials and all that, Ranga Maza Vegala and all those things, they keep on training people how to speak. General people, they are very happy having very simple dialogues. But nowadays, looking all these serials, the people's mind are getting so contaminated. If people are pious, they will watch such serial which will have at least Shabdik contamination. If people are horrible, they will watch some Ekta Kapoor or kind of a Netflix web series, and then the life is contaminated. And she just spoke to her father. She said that, Papa, if you are so great, tumhi pan IAS officer zhala asta na. And father became very angry. He was a teacher in the school, and he started beating the child, and the child lost his life. And this was, it was like many newspaper articles were written on this. So there also it comes Nati Himsena. One has to be very careful when we are correcting people, correcting our children. Excessive words also is not required, right? We should not also, what to speak of, slapping the child and beating should be avoided only. Nowadays, everybody is eating a lot of protein and people's hand also have a lot of energy. So one should be refraining from that. So this is also all the category of Nati Himsena. So this is devotees, the disposition of the mind. Next we come to text 16. Madhikshna darshana sparsha puja stuti abhinandanaihi bhuteshu mad bhavanaya satvena asangena cha. Translation:
the devotee should regularly see my status in the temple, touch my lotus feet, and offer worshipable paraphernalia and prayer. He should see in the spirit of renunciation from the mode of goodness and see every living entity as spiritual purport. Temple worship is one of the duties of a devotee. It is especially recommended for neophyte, but those who are advanced should not refrain from temple worship. There is distinction in the manner a neophyte and an advanced devotee appreciate the Lord's presence in the temple. A neophyte considers the Archa Vigraha, the statue of the Lord, to be different from the original personality of Godhead. He considers he considers it a representation of the Supreme Lord in the form of a deity. But an advanced devotee accepts the deity in the temple as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He does not see any difference between the original form of the Lord and the statue or archa form of the Lord in the temple. This is the vision of a devotee whose devotional service is in the highest stage of bhava or love of Godhead, whereas a neophyte's worship in the temple is a matter of routine duty. Temple deity worship is one of the functions of a devotee. He goes regularly to see the deity nicely decorated, and with veneration and respect, he touches the lotus feet of the Lord and presents offerings of worship such as fruits, flowers, and prayers. At the same time, to advance in devotional service, a devotee should see other living entities as spiritual sparks, parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. A devotee is to offer respect to every entity that has a relationship with the Lord, because every living entity originally has a relationship with the Lord as a part and parcel. A devotee should try to see all living entities on the same equal level of spiritual existence. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, a pandita, one who is learned, sees equally a learned Brahmana, a Shudra, a hog, a dog, and a cow. He does not see the body, which is only an outward dress. He does not see the dress of a Brahmana, or that of a cow, or that of a hog. He sees the spiritual spark, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. If a devotee does not see every living entity as a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, he is considered Prakrita Bhakta, a materialistic devotee. He is not completely situated on the spiritual platform. Rather, he is in the lowest stage of devotion. He does, however, show all respect to the deity. Although a devotee sees all living entities on a level of spiritual existence, he is not interested in associating with everyone. Simply because a tiger is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord does not mean that we embrace him because of his spiritual relationship with the Supreme Lord. We must associate only with persons who have developed Krishna consciousness. We should befriend and offer special respect to persons who are developed in Krishna consciousness. Other living entities are undoubtedly part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but because their consciousness is still covered and not developed in Krishna consciousness, we should renounce their association. It is said by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur that even if one is a Vaishnava, if he is not of good character, his company should be avoided, although he may be offered the respect of a Vaishnava. Anyone who accepts Vishnu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is accepted as a Vaishnava, but a Vaishnava is expected to develop all the good qualities of the demigods. The exact meaning of word Satvena is given by Sridhar Swami as being synonymous with Dhairyena or patience. One must perform devotional service with great patience. One should not give up the execution of devotional service because one or two attempts have not been successful. One must continue. Sri Rupa Goswami also confirms that one should be very enthusiastic and execute devotional service with patience and confidence. Patience is necessary for developing the confidence that Krishna will certainly accept me because I am engaging in devotional service. One has only to execute service according to the rules and the regulations to ensure success.
So the next is, we'll just quickly cover this. The devotee should regularly see me in the temple, touch my feet, and offer worshipable paraphernalia and prayers. So these are the next item, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. He should see in the spirit of renunciation and should see every living entity as spiritual. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, now look at this. This is the Supreme Lord himself saying, please go to temple and every day take my darshan. Right? So, temple worship is one of the important duty of a devotee. Prabhupada says there are two types of devotees, neophyte devotee and advanced devotee. So for neophyte devotee, it is extremely important to visit temple every day. But for advanced devotees also, they should not neglect this responsibility. Because while the neophyte devotees, they will see the form of the Lord and they will have some indication about the personality of Godhead, the advanced devotees, they will able to relish the beautiful darshan of the Supreme Lord. And this point comes again and again, that worshipping the deities in the temple. Sakam vacham spruhaniyam vadanti. This is, we have seen that beautiful verse. Paschanti te me ruchiraniyam basanta. Prasanna vaktra rudalochanani. Rupani divyani varapradani. Sakam vacham spruhaniyam vadanti. Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport, these are the deities of the Supreme Lord in the temple. So simply staying next, of course I am speaking this for myself, simply staying next to the temple is not enough. One has to visit temple every day. And one of my mentor, His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrit Swami Maharaj, he says that one should visit the temple at least twice a day. One goes morning, visits the temple, in the evening visits the temple. When we are visiting the temple, we should carry also something as an offering to the Supreme Lord. Of course, that we give some big donation during Janmashtami. That is important. That is very important. At the same time, it's not that Bhagwan aapko GPay kar diya maine mera donation. No, when one goes every time, he should carry something. So this is the duty. Prabhupada says, temple deity worship is a function of a devotee, and devotee will realize the deity as the Supreme Lord. Pratimana hi tumi sakshat Vrajendranandan. The next is seeing every living entities equally. And Srila Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne, Brahmane Gavihastini, Shuni Chaiva Shvapake Cha Pandita Samadarshana. And how we can see that? Because Pandita, he realizes it is simply a display of two energies which are taking place, which is Lord Kapila has very beautifully explained. That there is a material energy in terms of, there is a Jivatma, who is a living entity, who is Sachidananda everywhere, and the material energy in terms of goodness, passion, and ignorance. And this goodness, passion, ignorance is covering the Jivatma differently, and therefore there is a different manifestation. Somebody is looking as Vidya Vinaya Sampanna Brahmana, and somebody is looking as Shuni Chaiva Shvapakecha. But Prabhupada says, but that doesn't mean one is stupid to go and embrace the tiger. Prabhupada says here, we must associate with persons who have developed Kṛṣṇa consciousness. Right? So, seeing them equally doesn't mean that we behave with them also equally. One has to follow the common sense and Vaishnava etiquettes very carefully. And then Srila Prabhupada quotes the definition of Kanishta Adhikari, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikari, and how they exactly conduct themselves. And then finally, Srila Prabhupada quotes beautiful commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that even if one is a Vaishnava, if one is not of the good character, his company should be avoided, although he may be offered respect from a distance, because he is still a Vaishnava. Vaishnava is expected to develop all good qualities of the demigod. So what this means is, sometimes we may come across somebody, there may be some gray zones. So what this means is, do not criticize in the sense of having gossip or Vaishnava aparadh. Better to keep a respectable distance and maintain the respect. Instead of criticizing, gossiping, doing prajalpa, spreading the news or kind of a thing, one should refrain from all this and maintain a respectable distance. It is not that we are not Kṛṣṇa and we have come here to We are not Kṛṣṇa and Yama personified who have come here to rectify everybody and send everybody back home back to Godhead. That is not our duty. By doing this, we will simply fall down from our position by Vaishnava Aparadha. Finally, Srila Prabhupada quotes Sridhara Swami. And where Sridhara Swami says the word Satvena means Dhairyena and Dhairyena means patience. Prabhupada writes such a beautiful statement. Prabhupada says, sometimes we may fail in our attempts. 1-2 times we may fail somewhere here and there, but one should not be so devastated by that failure. So, as in the process of a lifetime of a devotional service, there may be some glitches, right? Sometimes, I remember when I was writing my MTech thesis, that the deadline was at some 10 or 11 o'clock in the night, and I was just coding. And that time it was very, very difficult. We used to do Fortran programming and coding, and that went on for such a long time. My japa was remaining, and it finally somehow 10:55, I submitted my thesis. All my rounds were remaining that time. So then I sat at 12 o'clock, chanted, 12 to 2, chanted 16 round, 2 to 4, chanting next day 16 round, and straight went to Radhesham Prabhu and told him that, Prabhuji, my rounds, they have, I have chanted, but this is what has happened. He is my counselor and mentor. So I went to him and just, so sometimes such things may happen because it is a lifetime of devotional service. We are not living in a world where, they lived ever after kind of happy endings. We are going to go through. Prabhupada says one should not be dejected by some temporary setbacks in one's life. One should have faith in Kṛṣṇa. One should have confidence in Kṛṣṇa. Avashya rakshibe Kṛṣṇa. And this is how one should engage in a lifetime of devotional service. So such a beautiful purport Srila Prabhupada writes. One can see, of course, a very erudite scholarship in the purports of Srila Prabhupada, but one also can see very grandfatherly concern, the motherly affection in the purports of Srila Prabhupada. So we will conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhupada.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.